Welcome to Learn Python the Hard Way, exercise 5. Today we're going to take a look at the 5th exercise from the Learn Python the Hard Way book, which covers additional variables and also printing. So if you want to follow along, you can click on the link in the description below, and there's a link to this particular chapter of Learn Python the Hard Way, the book. And this chapter is available for free, as are the first couple of chapters here. So just follow the link to follow along. So in this exercise here, we're going to continue with printing variables. And we are learning about a new string, the format string. So every time we put those double quotes around a piece of text, we are effectively creating a string. We print strings, we save strings to files, we can send strings to web servers, and many other things. And in this particular exercise, we are going to take a look at how we can work with strings. So we can use those curly braces here to actually embed variables inside of strings. And that can be very helpful, very useful if, for example, we have a variable that's changing over time and we want to print it out in a string. And in order to do that, we must start our string with the letter F for format, and then followed by the string. So here, for example, we have F, double quotes, hello, and then in curly braces a variable, and then the double quotes to end the string. And if we enter the F format keyword here in front, then what happens is that instead of literally printing out hello and then in curly braces somewhere, we're actually going to replace what's inside of those curly braces and somewhere with the actual variable name. And so we can use that to basically fill in any variable values directly into our string. So to get started with that, we can follow along here and type in the different variables names here on top. And then also, of course, the print statements where we are actually using this kind of format. And then we're going to take a look at what that actually looks like. So to get started, I'm going to switch over to my terminal, here into the Learn Python the Hard Way folder, where we already created the previous exercises. If you haven't seen those, they're actually also available. Now, to get started, let's create a new code file here, a new Python file, and we can actually directly create that and open it in our text editor. And I'm using Visual Studio Code. And to open a new text file in Visual Studio Code, we can just type in code and then followed by the name of that file. In this case, we can just call it ex5.py. And the .py is of course important because it's a Python file. And this creates a new file and open it directly in Visual Studio Code. And now we can just get started by typing out the different variable names. So the first one here is my name. In this case, that's the name of the author. And we can use double quotes or we can use single quotes as we are doing here. The next variable is my age, which is 35. And we can also add a comment here just by using the hash sign. Then we have my height, which is 74, and that should be in inches. And my eyes, which is the eye color in blue. And of course, instead of using those single quotes, we could also use double quotes. That works just as well. It can just be perceived as to be a little bit more clean if we have single quotes because we have sort of fewer characters on the screen. And then finally we have the hair color here, which is apparently brown. Alright, so these are the different variables that we defined. Now let's continue with the print statements. And here, in order to use the F formatting, we type in print as we did previously, but instead of right away typing in the double quotes and then the string within those double quotes, we type F and then we start with the double quotes. And of course, within those double quotes, we can then use single quotes. And now let's use the curly braces here. And now what we do is we type in the name of the first variable that we defined here. And what's going to happen is once we actually print out that print statement here, once we execute that file, we're going to see that this variable here is replaced by the actual value. So in this case, by the name of the author. And in a similar way, we can add additional print statements. So in this case, we are going to embed the height variable. And then we're going to add another print statement. And here we type in the weight, which again is a variable that we defined previously. Oh, and I just noticed I skipped that one. So let's add that in here. So my weight is 180, and as a comment, it is entered in pounds. So now we can double check that indeed it also highlights here my weight. Pounds heavy, like this. Let's continue. So we can of course also just add a regular string. In this case, we would not add the F character up front, but we just would enter the double quotes or single quotes with the actual string. And if you are using the single quotes instead of the double quotes, what you have to pay attention to is that if you're actually using another single quote, as we are doing here in this apostrophe, what would happen is actually that if we type this in, we would see that as soon as we encounter the first single quote here, that this will basically end the string, and then everything after that single quote has been closed, is basically no longer a string. So it would be perceived as either a keyword, as a not in this case, or as a variable that is not properly defined, so we would get an error. In order to resolve that, we can basically escape that single quote, that apostrophe, by entering a backspace. And then you can see the color changes right away. And that's what we have to do if we use those single quotes in order to avoid that. But the easiest solution here would be to just use double quotes instead of single quotes, because within those double quotes we can then of course just enter a single quote without it ending actually our string that we're creating. So next, let's use the F format string here again. He's got, and then we're going to type in the variable my eyes. And of course we can also use multiple variables here in a single statement, in a single string that we're using. Finally, we have this one here. His teeth are usually, and then again the variable. All right, and then we have a third block here with a comment on top. This line is tricky. Try to get it exactly right. All right, and first of all, we're calculating a new variable. So we're creating a new variable and assigning the value my age plus my height plus my weight. All right, that's going to be the total value variable. And then we can start by printing if I add my age, my height, and my weight, I get, and then the total variable value. So in this case, we are using 4 different variables that we are embedding here in the code statement. And again, if we were to remove this F, then that would not be valid code, and it would give us it would not give us an error, but actually what would happen is the following. It would actually just print out exactly what's shown here, so it would not replace the variables with the actual values that we assigned, but it would literally print out if I had open bracket, my age, close bracket, and so on and so forth. So we need to make sure to add the F here in front of the double quotes. All right, let's save this. In order to execute this file, I'm gonna open the terminal again, and now we can type in Python 3 followed by the name of the file. And once we press enter, we get exactly those statements here. So all the places where we added, let me just move this over, where we added the variables here and we added the F sign in front, it actually replaced it with a variable in here. And if instead, for example, we removed that F sign, we can see in this case here, let's talk about my name. It replaced my name with the name of the author here, the variable. But if we now execute it again after removing the F, we can see that it literally prints out the curly braces here. So we have to add this in again and save to have the correct statement. All right, so that's looking good. And if we compare it with the answer provided here, it's exactly what we are supposed to get. All right, so that's it for this exercise, and see you in the next video for the next exercise.